buried alive, not for murder, not for treason, but for loving. Imagine a world where your very existence is a sacred duty, where your body isn't yours, but a vessel for divine will, where a single moment of human desire could condemn you to a slow, agonizing death in a tomb beneath the earth. This isn't fiction. This is the story of the Vestal Virgins of ancient Rome, a tale of devotion, control, and unimaginable cruelty. Today, we're diving into one of history's darkest chapters, where purity was a prison and punishment was a spectacle. You won't believe how Rome treated its most sacred women. The sacred role of the Vestal Virgins in ancient Rome. The Vestal Virgins were more than priestesses. They were living symbols of the city's survival. Chosen as young girls, often before the age of 10, they served Vesta, the goddess of the hearth, whose eternal flame was believed to protect Rome itself. These girls, plucked from elite families, were tasked with keeping that flame burning day and night for 30 years. If the flame went out, disaster, famine, the fall of Rome, or so the Romans believed. The Vestals were revered, almost divine themselves. They held privileges no other women in Rome could dream of. They could own property, make wills, even testify in court. They walked through Rome in white robes, their hair bound in intricate braids, surrounded by an aura of untouchable holiness. But there was a catch, a brutal one. To serve Vesta, they swore a vow of chastity, absolute, lifelong chastity. For 30 years, their bodies belonged to the goddess, to Rome, to the state. Love, desire, even a fleeting glance at a man could spell their doom. Why such a harsh rule? To the Romans, a Vestal's virginity wasn't just personal, it was cosmic. Their purity was tied to the city's prosperity, its divine favor. A chaste Vestal meant a thriving Rome, a fallen Vestal, a direct threat to the gods' goodwill, and Rome didn't take kindly to threats. The price of breaking the vow. Let's talk about what happened when a Vestal virgin broke her vow of chastity, or was even suspected of it. The punishment wasn't a fine, a public shaming, or exile. No, it was something far darker, far more horrific. The Romans called it vivisepulture, burial alive. Here's how it worked. If a Vestal was accused of incestum, the crime of breaking her chastity, she faced a trial before the Pontifex Maximus, Rome's highest priest. Evidence, often flimsy. A rumor, a jealous rival, a suspicious glance could be enough. The trial was less about justice and more about spectacle, a public purging of impurity. If found guilty, the Vestal's fate was sealed. The ritual was meticulously cruel. The condemned Vestal was stripped of her sacred status, her white robes replaced with plain cloth. She was led through the streets of Rome in a funeral procession, not to honor her, but to erase her. Crowds watched in silence as she was taken to a place called the Campus Celleratus, the field of crime, just inside the city walls. There, a small underground chamber awaited, barely a room, more a tomb carved into the earth. Inside, the Romans placed a meager offering, a loaf of bread, a jug of water, a bit of oil, maybe some milk. Just enough to prolong her suffering. The Vestal was forced down a ladder into this pit, and then the entrance was sealed with earth. No executioner's blade, no swift death, just darkness, hunger, and the slow suffocation of being forgotten. Why burial alive? The Romans were clever, even in their cruelty. Killing a Vestal directly was taboo. Her blood couldn't be spilled. So they devised a punishment that wasn't technically murder. They left her to the gods, letting starvation or suffocation claim her. A loophole for their conscience, but no less barbaric. A glimpse into the horror. Let's pause to imagine this. You're a young woman, maybe in your 20s, who has spent your life tending a sacred flame. Maybe you fell in love, a forbidden glance, a stolen moment. Or maybe you did nothing at all, just caught the wrong person's attention. Now you're descending that ladder. The air is damp, cold. The walls close in. Above, you hear the scrape of dirt piling over your tomb. The light vanishes. You're alone with a loaf of bread and a flickering lamp. you know no one is coming. You know the city you served will let you waste away. Historical records don't tell us how long it took for these women to die. Days? A week? The bread and water might delay the inevitable, but the end was certain. Some stories suggest Vestals scratched at the walls until their fingers bled. Others say they prayed, hoping for divine mercy that never came. The Romans didn't care about their suffering. They cared about the message it sent: purity must be preserved at any cost. How often did this happen? Not frequently, but enough to leave a mark. In Rome's 1,000-year history, perhaps a dozen Vestals were buried alive. The most famous cases, like that of Cornelia in 91 BCE, shocked even the Romans. Cornelia was accused without solid proof, her trial a political maneuver to silence her powerful family. Yet she was buried all the same. The rarity of these punishments only amplified their terror. Every Vestal lived knowing that one misstep, one rumor, could end her life in a tomb. The society that built the tomb. What kind of society does this to its own? To understand the Vestal Virgins' fate, we have to look at Rome itself, a civilization obsessed with order, control, and divine favor. The Vestals weren't just priestesses, they were tools of a patriarchal, superstitious system. Their virginity was a state asset, a safeguard against chaos. To the Romans, a woman's body wasn't her own. It belonged to the gods, the state, the men who ruled both. The Vestals' chastity was a microcosm of Rome's broader obsession with controlling women. Roman women had little autonomy. Most were under the legal authority of their fathers or husbands. But the Vestals, despite their privileges, were uniquely shackled. Their bodies were public property, scrutinized by priests, senators, and even the masses. A Vestal's purity wasn't just about her. It was about Rome's survival. A single, impure act could, in their eyes, bring plague, famine, or military defeat. This wasn't just religious fanaticism, it was power. The priests who judged the Vestals, like the Pontifex Maximus, held immense influence. Condemning a Vestal was a way to flex that power, to remind everyone, especially women, of their place. The trials were public, the punishments theatrical, designed to instill fear. And it worked. For centuries, the Vestals towed the line, knowing the cost of defiance. But let's not pretend this was just about religion. It was about control. Control over women's bodies, their desires, their very humanity. The Vestals were elevated, yes, but only as long as they remained pure. Step out of line, and Rome would crush you, not with a sword, but with a tomb. A modern reflection. The story of the Vestal Virgins isn't just a gruesome footnote in history. It's a mirror. The Romans' obsession with controlling women's bodies echoes through time into our own world. Today, we may not bury women alive for their choices, but the scrutiny persists. Laws, cultures, and institutions still police women's autonomy, dictating what they can wear, who they can love, what they can do with their bodies. From purity culture to reproductive rights, the shadow of Rome lingers. The Vestals were trapped by a society that saw their worth only in their sacrifice, their silence, their submission. Sound familiar? Every time a woman's choices are judged, shamed, or legislated, we're seeing the same impulse that sealed those underground tombs. The tools have changed, but the goal hasn't: control. So the next time you hear about a woman being punished for her choices, her body, her desires, her freedom, remember the Vestal Virgin. Remember the girls who tended the flame, who carried Rome's hopes, and paid the ultimate price for being human. Their story isn't just history, it's a warning.